This is the second video for the third class of social psychological perspectives on health. In the first video, I talked about social identity theory and explained how our identity could be related to well-being. Namely, we could have a positive identity, not just only as an individual, but also as a group member. And through identifying with a group, we could have a positive identity. And then we are intrinsically motivated to have a positive identity. And then when such motivation is satisfied, we would have better well-being. And I also explained when our positive identity is compromised, people may have different approaches to either restore or abandon their identities. And so when people see that they can really, or well, when people see that they can leave a group, then they will simply leave the group and try to minimize the impact that they may have from a compromised or negative identity, negative social identity. But when they see that their group is not permeable, meaning that it's not so easy to leave the group, then they will think about whether they could find other aspects that make their group more positive or superior. And then also, if they see that the situation or the circumstances of a group is illegitimate or insecure, meaning that if they take an action, then they can change the situation or improve the status of their group. Then they take the approach of social competition. And through the social competition or social creativity, they can restore their positive social identity. That's basically what I have explained in the first video. And here, let's take another example to further understand the social identity restoration. Okay, social identities and responses to circumstances. So let's take gender discrimination as an example. So people can define themselves in terms of different social categories. And then here, if a woman sees herself as a woman who shares social identity with other women. So basically, a woman could say, I am a student of the university, or I'm a member of tennis club, or I am a woman. So through using different groups and social categories, they can define themselves differently. And here, if she defines herself as a woman, then and then also when she perceived the discrimination targeted toward the women, then her well-being would be compromised because knowing that women is discriminated and then knowing that she is a woman, then she may anticipate the that she will be discriminated, and then such anticipation would negatively impact her well-being. So basically, her identity is compromised because of the gender discrimination. But even if she defines herself as a woman, if she sees the discrimination as illegitimate and unstable, then she will take actions and her well-being can be saved through the means that her gender identity positivity is restored. So meaning that she can take the approach of social competition. So, like this, social identity theory gives us some start point for understanding when and how social identities affect our health and well-being. So, when someone identify themselves as a, discriminated group, their well-being would be likely compromised, or their well-being would go down, you know. But if they also uh, see the illegitimateness of the discrimination, or instability of the discrimination, or instability of the status of their group, then their well-being may be sustained or even improved through social competition, or maybe even if the discrimination is unstable, they may still take the approach social creativity. Okay, so social identity theory really gives us understanding about when or how people identify with a group, and then how such identification may impact their health and well-being. Another approach that is really important to understand to better understand about the well-being is social categorization theory. This is a psychology of group behavior. So, as I explained in the last video, social identity theory, SIT, is about how people's behavior is shaped by intergroup relations. So, by defining oneself as a member of a group and knowing how their group stands compared to other groups, they may take different actions and behaviors. Okay. S- Self-categorization theory, SCT, is about when and which particular social identity we use to define ourselves and what are the consequences. Okay, so social identity theory is really about how people behave, but self-categorization theory is about how people define themselves and how such definition impact their, well, yeah, what kind of consequences of such definition we would have. Okay. A core goal of the theory is what makes people to engage in group behavior. And the traditional answer to this question was interdependence and mutual attraction. So because there is an interdependence among group members, and because there is mutual attraction between group members, they engage in group behavior. Because there is interdependence, they help each other. And because there is a mutual attraction, they like each other, and thus they help each other. I work for you because I like you, and then you work for me. You know, I like you part is the reflection of mutual attraction, and then you work for me and I work for you. This is the part explaining the interdependence. Okay, but I'd like you to remember about the minimal group paradigm. So in the when I explained about minimal group studies, you may remember that, in this setting, in this situation, people do not know each other, and then people would never have opportunities to meet each other. And then because of that, there should be no interdependence, and then there should be no mutual attraction. Okay. So after knowing that people still take intergroup behavior even when there is no interdependence and mutual attraction, there was a need to understand why people engage in group behavior, or what makes them to engage in group behavior. Okay. Okay, sorry, and the computer got slowed down, but I think uh, it's okay now. Okay, so one other important concept in the self-categorization theory is called depersonalization. This is the process of defining oneself in terms of social identity, which is what we have been talking. So as one's social identity becomes more important or more salient, one's perception of the world and one's act are determined by the sense of oneself as a group member, like us, rather than as a unique individual, I. So this is depersonalization. And then related concept is called a self-stereotyping. A process of stereotyping, self-stereotyping is seeing oneself with a set of stereotypes shared with other in-group members. Okay, so depersonalization itself is a process of defining oneself in terms of social identity. And self-stereotyping is through identifying oneself as a member of a group, one see themselves having similar or having, well, no, sorry. Through depersonalization, one comes to see having stereotypes of that group. Okay, so really seeing that one is sharing the stereotypes that the group members have. And then there is an example in the textbook about doctor on the street and at the hospital. So a doctor may ask to remove clothes or tell medical history when he or she is at a hospital. But he or she would not do that on the street. And if they would do that on the street, they will get the problem, you know. So when a doctor is at the hospital, a doctor is likely to define oneself as a doctor and then also stereotypes themselves as having particular traits that many doctors often have. But a same individual may define oneself differently when they are on the street. And because they define themselves differently, they would not ask or do something that doctors are likely to do. Okay? So here is another hypothesis. Hypothesis 8, the non-enactment hypothesis. When and to the extent that a person defines themselves in terms of a given social identity, they will enact or at least strive to enact the norms and the values associated with that identity. So when an individual defines him or herself as a doctor, he or she tries to value uh, associate sorry, they try to value the norms associated with that group and then try to behave in accordance with the norms and values associated with that identity. Okay, so let me explain more about the process of depersonalization. Through a process of stereotyping, the person blue. So basically, this one, right? Hold on. Okay. Okay. Oops. Through a process of self-stereotyping, the person blue comes to see oneself as a member of the same social category. So when a blue perceives, for example, himself as an individual, then he is likely to find the differences between himself and others. Like other people are green and I am blue. But through the process of depersonalization, like when he identify with a group that group green people belong, then they he is going to find traits that other group members have also belong to this blue himself. Okay. So self-stereotyping is a process through which the self comes to be seen as categorically interchangeable with other group members. And by interchangeable, it means that things that are interchangeable can be exchanged with each other without it making any difference. So it basically means like same. Okay. For example, Carrie and Mike are both doctors, and they think either produce same consequences. So if you need to see a doctor, and then you know that both Carrie and Mike are doctor, and then if you define themselves in terms of a doctor category, then you do not really see the difference between seeing Carrie and Mike, and then you see that way because it would not produce any different consequences. Basically, it would produce same consequences. And then often when people study about the process of depersonalization, they tend to think that it is a loss of self, but it's not really accurate description of depersonalization, but it's more like a redefinition of self. So when people define themselves as an individual and then they come to define themselves as a group member from an individual to a group member, then this theory calls the process as the depersonalization. Okay, it's not really about the loss of self, but the definition of self from an individual to a group member. Okay. And determinants of social identity are salience. The process of depersonalization explains how people come to see themselves in terms of social identity, but not when or why. So this section tries to explain when or why people define themselves with a particular identity rather than other identities. There are two factors that determine identity salience. Salience really means which identity is more obvious, you know. And then when a particular identity is salient, they are more likely to use that identity to define themselves. Okay, so those two factors are the fit of a particular self-categorization and a person's readiness to use it. Here, fit refers to the extent to which a particular self-categorization allows individuals to make sense of themselves in the context at hand and the likeliness that individuals define themselves with that group. Okay, it's kind of complicated, I think. So let me explain more. Fit itself depends on two factors. The first one is within group and intergroup similarity. This is called comparative fit. So for example, depressed people are more alike each other than depressed and non-depressed people. Or, well, actually, I have some examples below, so let me explain later. And the other factors that determines fit is the differences of in-group and out-group correspond to prior expectations. This is called normative fit. Depressed people are less happy than non-depressed people. So these two factors kind of look similar each other, and I think they are pretty confusing. So comparative fit is really the differences between within group members and between groups. Okay. So when a particular category uh, is used, and then when people belonging to that category is more similar than the people belonging to different categories, then you can say that category has a comparative fit. So if you want to define or if you want to divide people into depressed people and non-depressed people, and then if you find that there are more differences between depressed people than between depressed and non-depressed people, then you say the comparative fit is low. Okay. But if you find that there are less differences between depressed people than between depressed people and non-depressed people, then you can say the category has a comparative fit. Okay. So another example is gender category is comparatively fit. So meaning that when you want to compare between women, so if you want to compare this and this and this and this, or this and this, right? Then you find that, okay, these women are pretty similar each other, but such similarity is much higher than the similarity between this woman and this man. Then you would say comparative gender categories comparatively fit. But now you divide people into how they are similar each other, and then you found that they are not really divided by their gender category, right? Rather, uh, so in this case, you would say gender category is not comparatively fit. And then you realize that, okay, these people are actually Japanese men and women. And then these people are actually American women and men. Then you say, okay, these people, these individuals' similarity is much higher than this one and this one. Then you say nationality is comparatively fit. So again, it's really the differences between within group members and between groups. And when within group member is more similar than between groups, then you can say there is a comparative fit. Okay. And another one, normative fit. This is kind of confusing. I think this is more confusing actually. So when you say that, okay, Japanese people tend to eat rice a lot, right? And the American people tend to eat bread more. Then, and then you actually observe such differences between Japanese people and the American people. Then you would say that this nationality has a nationality is normatively fit because normative fit is about differences of in-group and out-group corresponds to prior expectations. So you expect that Japanese people eat rice and the American people eat bread more. And then you actually observe that, okay, this kind of my understanding is really accurate. That really matches with what I'm observing right now. Then you say that this nationality is normatively fit. But you found that, okay, actually, some people eat rice and the others eat bread. And there's no really, nationality really doesn't explain or help to explain who eats what. Then you say this nationality is not normatively fit. And then you realize that, okay, actually, it's not really about what they eat, but some people look happier than other people, than others in other group, then uh you may want to use a different category. Okay, nationality is not really a good one. Maybe I can separate or define people in terms of how they are depressed or not. And then it happened to be the way that the people in the left side are depressed and the people in the right side are not depressed. Then okay, now and then you expect that depressed people depressed people look unhappy, and then non-depressed people tend to look happy. And if this is what you actually observe, then you say, okay, depressed or non-depressed categorization is normatively fit. So to summarize what I have just explained, comparative fit is about the similarity between group members and between groups. And when similarity between group members within a group is higher than the between similarity between groups, then you say comparative fit is high. So the way you separate people into two groups has a comparative fit, and such the way you separate people could be gender or nationality or whether they depress or what they eat. You know? And the normative fit is about how their actual behavior is in accordance with your expectation. And when the prior expectation really fit with what you now actually observe, then you say there's a normative fit. But the way you divide people into groups does not explain how they actually behave. Then you may say normative fit is low, and you may want to look for different categories or different ways to divide them. And then when the new ways to divide people it, fit with what you may expect from such categorization, then you say that categorization has a normative fit. Okay. I think this explanation is pretty confusing and you may want to read and reread the textbook. But basically, this is what you usually do without thinking too much. If you want to use a particular category, you use it because you want to explain them. And then if the category you are using doesn't help to explain them, then you may look for different categories to better explain them. This is really when you find comparative or normative fit don't work. And then you look for new categories that really has high comparative and normative fit. So maybe you might want to also look for the way you categorize others and then what kind of categories do I really use and then why do I choose that? And then you may realize that because that category has a high comparative and normative fit. Okay, so I think I will just stop here and then I will talk about readiness and more about social identity theory and the self-categorization theory in the following lectures. Thank you.